This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, I have an author on the phone with me tonight. We have an interesting way how we come to know each other just in the past couple of days, but I have the wonderfully talented Jim Valente on the phone with me tonight. I got that right, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Yes, I gotta give a little bit of background here because this doesn't happen all the time. Like I do this as a volunteer, and it's wonderful when somebody, especially through someone that's rather unknown, likes an interview that I've done and says, "Hey, I want to get on this show." And of course, I interviewed Lesa Johnson back in April, and Lisa's a wonderful young lady, and she's always been supportive of me, and I see her tag stuff on my Facebook page quite often, and I had her on here back in April, and the studio release of that just came out, and she was quite excited about that. And then all of a sudden, like, I had this friend's request from you, but I didn't know who you were. And I was like, okay, I've had this happen before. And usually, unless I have friends in common with these people, I don't add them. But then I get this post on my Facebook wall from Lesa Johnson telling me to check out Blood Passion, check out Jim Valente's book. And I'm like, okay. I went back and I added you because something told me you were trying to get my attention.
Yeah. She was too.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you guys stuck to it, because I might have just passed you off, and I didn't want to. I'm glad that didn't happen. I'm glad we're getting to talk, and I'm glad that I discovered you are legit. I just wanted to start off, though. I would like to get a little bit of your background.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you want to know?
Where you grew up and how you became a writer.
Okay. Well, I just turned 65 last month, so I've been around for a little while.
Okay.
I grew up living around Boston, Massachusetts, that is, and I got into writing in a sad kind of way. Back in 2007, when I was 55 years old, I had a stroke.
Okay.
And it was more serious than I thought. It didn't leave me with any disability that's noticeable. But I had a stroke. Anytime, in the medical world, anytime you have any damage to your brain of any kind, whether you have a stroke or you fall down, you hit your head, they want you to go to counseling afterwards because they want to keep an eye on you because depression sets in.
Okay.
So I had a great counselor. I used to visit with her once a week. And we used to talk, and she kept an eye on me. And one day she said to me, "Jim, I have a voluntary assignment for you." And I says, "What's that?" She says, "I'd like you to write a letter to yourself about yourself." And she said, "Now, you don't have to do this, but I want you to think about doing it." Well, I left her office. I was sitting in my vehicle, on my way home, and I thought about what she said. And I said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. Well, I started to write about myself, and it turned into a book. Okay. So the first book I ever wrote and had published is my autobiography, because I've had somewhat of a strange life. I've had a couple of medical miracles in my life. I did everything a little earlier than I should have, and I'm saying everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a different life. It's been very different than anybody else's life, which most lives are, but mine's been quite unique. So I wrote that, and because I was a nobody, I had to self-publish, so I self-published it. And my little fan base in my area here read it. They were buying it, they were reading it, and when they got done with it, they said, "What's next?" Because they liked it.
Okay.
I did a few unique things in the book, too, that the publisher was astounded about. I mean, everybody has a soundtrack to their life. You have music, songs that remind you of people, places, and things in your life when you hear them.
Yep.
So I decided every once in a while before an episode I would tell about my life, I would put a title of a song and then I would talk about my life. And that meaning that song reminded me of what I'm going to tell you about. And the publisher, they said to me, they says, we've never seen anybody do that before. I says, I know, but everybody has a soundtrack to their life. They said, wow, that's very unique. Yeah, go for it. And then I would stop every once in a while and talk to the reader, a direct comment right to the reader. So it was, I set it up a little different. And also, I wrote it incognito. The only last name you know in the story is mine. There are no last names of any of the people in the story because I didn't want to have problems.
Okay.
With legalities and stuff like that. So I wrote it incognito. So that was published, and like I said, it went out to the public, and that was a really strange situation. I mean, you write your life, you put your life down in the computer, and the publisher says, when you're done, send it to us, because everything's sent through electronic email now when it comes to writing and publishing. No more hard copy situations until they're printed. But long story short, I sat there in front of the computer with the attachment on the email to go to the publisher, and I said to myself, I'm about to put my life out to the world, because books are sold all over the planet. You go on Amazon, you buy a book, whether it's in print or ebook, and you can do that anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. So here I am, opening up my life to everybody on the planet, whoever wants to read it. So I kind of sat there for a while thinking, should I really do this? And I closed my eyes. I just touched the enter button and closed my eyes and just pressed it. And once it's gone, and did it. So I said, okay, I can't bring it back. It's done. It's out there. Get back to my fan base around here. They read it. They liked it. And I had beta readers because I started to write the book, and I wasn't sure if it was really any good. Your worst judgment judges yourself. And I had a friend of mine, Pamela, who was in her 50s, and I asked her if she'd like to read the first 3 chapters and tell me what she thought. I said, I want your honest truth. So she read it, and she got back to me and said, I love it, I want more. I said, you want to read more? She goes, yeah, I want to read more about your life. And then she was working at the Beth Israel Hospital in Boston as doing clerical work. And there's a group of women that she worked with, and she used to bring in the printed out pages to work. And one day she's sitting around reading them, and her girlfriends are like, what are you reading, Pam? She goes, I'm reading a manuscript. And they said, wow, is it any good? She goes, yeah, it's great. Because what they liked about it, I was astounded because women liked it. What they liked about it was I was opening up and being honest. Mm-hmm. I was a man opening up to them and being honest about my feelings. And men don't like to do that, really.
No.
But they were enthralled with the fact that they were getting inside my head and hearing what I really thought about things and how I felt. So anyway, she used to bring the pages in to work with her. And they formed a book reading club called the Good Books Club. There were 6 women from ages from 20s to 60s. So I had all different age groups of women reading my manuscript as I wrote it. And they were loving it. And they couldn't wait to get the next chapter because they had to wait till I wrote it. And Pam would go into work. Pam, you got the next chapter? No, I haven't got it yet. So I'd get it done, not hurry it, but I'd get it done and give it to her. And they had like a pecking order. Because Pam would read it first, and then they drew numbers on who would get it next. It was wild.
Okay.
And they were having fun. They were having great fun with it. And when it ended, they were like, oh, it's over, So everybody was like, what's next, Jim? I says, well, that was my life from 1952 to 2000, a little after, in 2007, late 2007, after my stroke. I said, there's not much more to write about my life. They said, well, how about something else? I said, you mean like fiction? And I said, yeah, well, let me think about it. So I thought about it. And I said, if I'm going to write fiction, it's going to be in the real world. That's the best fiction to write. It's the toughest, too, because you have guidelines, even though it's fake. And I thought about the human condition. The human condition, to me, has always been the fight between good and evil within us. We have good thoughts, we have bad thoughts, and thankfully most people don't carry out their bad thoughts. But we all have them.
Mm-hmm.
But because we're civilized and we're mostly, we're civilized and most of us are pretty good people, we don't carry out the bad thoughts. But I wanted to write something about that because people can relate to that. But at that point in time, back in 2010, vampires were really hot. It was hot on television, hot in books, and hot in movies.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to make the evil side of the person a vampire and the good side just a good, decent person. So I wrote the first Blood Passion book. And I had beta readers because, I wanted to know how I was doing. And they were all loving it. They said, "This is great, we love it." And because I had a book published before this, I was able to find a publisher that I didn't have to self-publish with. They picked up the book. They were called Publish America at the time. They're now called America Star Books. They published Blood Passion. And the people that bought it and read it, most people liked it. I got like 1 or 2 bad reviews. And here it is, fiction. One of the stupidest reviews I got. You get bad, good, and stupid reviews.
Yep.
I mean, first of all, vampires are total fiction. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you make it up as you go.
Yep.
I mean, there's a little ground rules and borderlines and stuff like that. So you use what you want. And one person ridiculed me and said I know nothing about vampires because I didn't use everything. I didn't use the fact that he can't see himself in the mirror. I thought that was stupid. So I left out a few things, and I didn't add much, but I left out a few things that the basic vampires have, or don't have, let's say. So I got ridiculed that I don't know anything about vampires. And I laughed at that, because what's there to know? You make it up, right?
Well, I would argue that the people that made Twilight don't know anything about vampires either.
Yeah, right. And the other ridicule I got was because basically in real life, when you drink liquid from a glass with a straw, it seems to go faster. You drink it faster with a straw than when you would just with your mouth. So in thinking of reality, trying to get some reality into this, my vampires suck blood, they don't drink it. I also felt that if you drink it, your stomach acid is going to destroy it. So like through their eye teeth, like little needles, they suck it right into their bloodstream. So I got ridiculed about that because somebody ridiculed me and said, "Well, you got vampires sucking blood, they're supposed to drink it." And that's what I said to you. I said to them, I said, "Well, if they drink it, your stomach acids are going to destroy it." I mean, a direct injection is a lot better.
Yeah.
And they can suck it out faster. And from what I've seen, like in the movie League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
Okay.
when the woman vampire attacks a guy and sucks his blood, I mean, it takes her like 3 seconds and the guy's dead. So I ran with that. But I got ridiculed for that, Other vampire writers were telling me I was wrong because vampires drink blood, they don't suck blood. I said, real vampires suck blood. Fake ones drink it.
In old folklore, they had to be bit in the neck 3 times as well.
Yep, right.
That seems to have bypassed. I haven't seen that, and I don't know when the last time I've seen that.
I mean, in speaking of folklore,
Mm-hmm.
I got now I based the whole thing in Mystic, Connecticut, and I've been down there, and I love it down there. It's a quaint, beautiful little town on the waterfront.
Okay.
And I've been down there, and I love it down there. It's just so nice. But I love the name, too, and I also live here in the Mystic Valley of Massachusetts.
Okay.
So I picked Mystic, Connecticut to be the base of my story. Most of the stuff in the book does exist, except for 2 things. His house, that you may have seen in the graphic, does not really exist. In the story, I mentioned a pub called the Lookout Pub, which is supposed to be on Main Street, and that's not there either. But there is a section of Main Street with a big wall up that burnt down. So I used that in the second book that the pub had burnt down. But I do mention the Mystic Pizza Restaurant, which is famous because of the movie with Julia Roberts.
Okay.
It's a famous, and I've eaten there, and the best pizza in the world, I'll tell you right now.
Cool, yeah.
And I mentioned that. I make mention of the Mystic Pizza in the books. I use the location. So, and also, when my vampire travels to like Hartford, Connecticut, or Providence, Rhode Island to do a feeding, I give you directions in the book that would take you exactly where he went. So if you follow my directions, you'll end up where the vampire went to do a feeding. It's almost like a treasure map. And halfway through the writing of the book, I had painted myself into a corner. And I says, oh, God, how am I going to get out of this? So I stopped writing for a while, and I got out my Hauntings in Connecticut book. And at the end of the book, there's a 3-page story entitled Vampires in Our Midst. And I said, I never really read this, so I read it. And what is it about? I'll give you the short of it. In the late 1800s, people were dying pretty young from what they called consumption, which is now called tuberculosis.
Okay.
And when you die of consumption or tuberculosis, you have very little blood left in your body. So back then, their ignorance of medicine, they thought vampires were killing off their people. And actually, this is where Dracula actually came from. Before that, there was nothing like it except for the animals that live on blood, like mosquitoes, leeches, and bats. So it actually, that situation of consumption and the loss of blood for no explained reason actually made Bram Stoker's idea of writing Dracula.
Okay.
It's amazing where that came from. So I got, I read that and I said, I can use this, because what I had done was one of his victims' bodies washed up on a Newport beach, and because he was disposing of them into the ocean, because he lived on his house was on a cliff overlooking the ocean down in Mystic.
Okay.
And he was disposing of the bodies by throwing them off the cliff. And they'd get washed out to sea. Well, one of them washes up on a Newport beach, and the coroner shows up, and they examine the body, and it's been in the water for quite a while. And because they don't want to panic, they're not going to come out and say there's a vampire out there. What they do is the coroner gets together with the chief of police and decides, we can't tell the truth on this. What do we do? He says, well, what we can do is this, Chief. We'll put out a report that she had contracted tuberculosis and was really bad off, so she decided to drown herself. He goes, good, go with that. So I reversed it.
Okay.
So in other words, they claim that she died from tuberculosis, not a vampire, where back in the 1800s they were thinking that people were dying from being attacked by a vampire and not tuberculosis. So it got me out of that corner that I painted myself into. And the uniqueness about my vampire is I created him in a different way. He's not of the lineage of Dracula at all. Most vampires, they can trace their lineage back to Dracula. But mine isn't. Mine's the Dracula that should have been created. He's created in a way that, I'll explain it this way. This is the best way. The first book, Blood Passion, is a combination of Jekyll and Hyde, Psycho, and Beauty and the Beast.
Okay.
It starts out like Jekyll and Hyde. He has two personalities within his mind and body. One is his vampire side that comes out when he needs blood, and the other is just his human side that you wouldn't know about, that, it's like a secret identity. And also his other side speaks to him within his mind, so that's a psycho situation. But toward the end of the story, he falls in love with a woman, which weakens him to his destruction.
Okay.
So it's like a Beauty and the Beast story. And I got that idea from the original King Kong movie, and the last line of the movie, classic line, is, "What the bullets didn't kill the beast, it was beauty killed the beast." So I said, I'm going to end it that way. So I ended it that way, and I left a few things open, and I wrote that, and people liked that, and they wanted more. I said, oh, God, they want more. So then I wrote Blood Passion 2,
Wow.
which Lesa found on the Internet. This is how Lesa got interested.
Okay.
She found that, I was doing my Facebook page, and I would put up my books and what was going on with them and stuff like that. And we became Facebook friends. And she wanted the books. But somebody out there, now the only way you could get Blood Passion 2 at the time I got to know her was the publisher had stopped supplying it in print form. They only have it in ebook. And she was really interested in reading both of them because I talked to her and I says, well, the first one is out there. She goes, yeah, I know that. She goes, but I want to read both. She goes, and some guy, some person out there, some bookseller, was selling book number 2 at the time for $1,200.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
And she, of course, she noticed that. And we got to talking. And she said, Jim, I really want to read your books, but I don't want to pay $1,200 for a book. I says, I know you don't. I says, I have copies. And this is what I can do for you. If you send me a money order for $38, I'll send you both books. It'll cover the postage and everything. And she says, okay, I'll do that. So finally, she sent me the money order, and then I sent her the books, and she finally got them, and she read them, and she loved them. And she said to me, she goes, these would make awesome movies. Because it's not like Twilight. It's not like True Blood. My male vampire in the first book is a serial killer. He kills 8 people in the story.
Okay.
He's a monster, okay, which is what a vampire is supposed to be. I mean, he's someone you run from. You don't kiss and hug him,
Nope.
So I went back to the old way. I'm old school. I'm 65 years old. I went back to the original vampire genre where they kill people, and like you would eat a chicken, they kill a human being.
Yep.
With no remorse, But the thing is, with my character, he's half human. So when he's a vampire, his human side gets, he's more or less blacks out. But when he wakes up, he knows what he did, so he has to deal with his human guilt, which is the human condition. He does something bad, he has to deal with it. Because in his situation, it's not really his fault; it's out of his control. And the big thing in the story, he's trying to get control of that. That's the underlining story. He's trying to get more control of his evil side to maybe stop from doing this. So he does a lot of research and reading, and it's not boring because Lesa said I was never bored reading it. And he does a lot of reading about vampires to find out if they really ever existed. And he's reading all kinds of books and things about vampires, and I've read them all anyway. Even Doyle had a Sherlock Holmes story about a vampire.
Okay.
So, I read that, and I had him reading because he was in this beautiful house he inherited from his grandfather. There's a picture of the house on the title page. There's pictures out there on my website, on our website, but my Facebook page. It's a beautiful Victorian house from the 1940s. He inherited from his grandfather, and also his grandfather was very rich. So he inherited the house, he inherited a lot of money, and his grandfather had a library of a lot of first editions of classic books. The classics, the old books,
Mm-hmm.
but they were first editions. So you can imagine how much they were really worth. So here's this 32-year-old guy sitting in this gorgeous house that's paid for, with all kinds of money, and he's got a library to use and read. So during the course of the story, he's reading these books, trying to find out the history of vampires and if they really ever existed. And every time he reads a story, he realizes, okay, this is fiction. This didn't happen. And he finally says to himself, so I'm really the first. I'm the first real vampire that's ever existed. And he's not a living dead vampire. He's alive.
Okay.
He just has this condition where he needs to take in blood every 2 weeks to survive. And that's his other persona. That's his other personality. And I gave it a name. His name is Michael, and his evil side is called Malice.
Okay.
So Jekyll and Hyde, Michael and Malice.
Okay.
And that's the first book is his story, and I make it out to be his memoirs. Because Edgar Rice Burroughs did that with John Carter. He supposedly wrote the Princess of Mars and all the Mars books from the memoirs of John Carter.
Okay.
So I adopted the idea of doing that. In other words, I obtained these memoirs of this guy, and I wrote the book based on the memoirs. And I explained that at the end of the story. And I figured if Edgar Rice Burroughs can do it, I can do it too, right?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, the guy was a great writer. I mean, I've read a lot of the classics. Edgar Rice Burroughs, L. Frank Baum, Doyle, H.G. Wells. I love all that stuff. I'm old school. And when it comes to movies and stuff like that, Humphrey Bogart's my favorite actor. Casablanca's my favorite movie.
Great movie.
Yeah. I mean, and I judge everything by those. I mean, there's been a few movies that gave me the same feeling, but not too many. Hanover Street gave me the same feeling as Casablanca. There was even talk about doing a sequel to Casablanca using Harrison Ford in Bogey's part.
Okay.
It never came through. They never did it, but I was excited to hear it. But Casablanca is my favorite movie. The song in that is my favorite song as time goes by. I just love the classics. I mean,
Same
Hollywood, they can't do the stuff that used to be done. They can't do it. Even when they do remakes, it's not as good.
Very few remakes. Very, very few remakes. I would argue I do like the 1978 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I think they did a good job with that. I like the American version of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, you know. Those are ones I think really, really tried, and I think they succeeded. Whether they're better than their originals, that's debatable. But I think they're definitely recommended. But you're definitely right. A lot of remakes are really, really bad. Just look at the remake to Psycho.
They've never tried to remake Casablanca. Never.
Yeah, we don't want to put that hint in their mind. Look at the remake of Psycho. How horrible was that?
Oh, God. Oh, I know you like horror. I like horror, but I like Alfred Hitchcock horror.
I had Alfred Hitchcock's granddaughter on my show.
Yeah?
Yep.
He's a genius. Horror.
Yeah, I think Alfred Hitchcock changed the way I look at movies because back in 1996 when I started reviewing movies, I attended a midnight screening of Psycho, and it changed how I looked at movies.
Yep.
And through Hitchcock, I got introduced to James Stewart, Cary Grant, and the gorgeous Grace Kelly. And
I fell in Rear Window. Yes. I fell in love with her.
Rear Window is my favorite Hitchcock film.
And her character's name is Lesa, by the way.
Yep. I love Grace Kelly. But
she was an angel on earth. She was unbelievable. And I loved everything she was in.
Yep.
She was great.
Another film that should not have been remade too was the original Halloween. I think Rob Zombie kind of overstepped his boundaries a little bit on that one.
That was for money. That was just for money.
Yeah, and I don't think Carpenter, judging from stuff that I've seen online and interviews, I don't think Carpenter was happy about some of the stuff that took place.
No, he wasn't. I mean, they've done a lot of remake. They've remade Carpenter movies all the time, and they stink.
Yep.
I mean, The Fog, his original was great. The remake was horrible.
Yeah, I think there's rumors that they're going to do Escape from New York. I'm like, I got a great idea. Why don't they just take Escape from L.A. and do that one right?
Yeah, I know. Well, I love Kurt Russell, too, as an actor. He's fantastic.
Yep, absolutely. It sounds to me like you're a thinking writer, because I like how you're going through this and you're thinking about these things as you go, and thinking about how you want your vampire to be. Actually, I meant to ask you, do you have a favorite vampire movie?
Actually, Dark Shadows.
The
television show and the movie.
Okay.
That was great stuff. It's so popular, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's still popular today.
Wasn't a huge fan of the movie, but I actually come to know about the Dark Shadows show through the movie. I think Johnny Depp was kind of repeating himself by that time, but
I was disappointed in them doing that because they made it campy.
Yeah,
I did. The show was totally serious.
Now I love.
There was no laughing in that show. I mean, it was a total serious story.
Now I love Chloe Grace Moretz, though.
Yeah, but I mean, when they made the movie, I was hoping that they would do a serious, do it justice. And when I saw it, I went, "Oh my God, they ruined this." That's why there's no sequels.
My favorite vampire movie is Fright Night. I love Fright Night.
Yeah.
And it's got a great.
I like the original, the Dracula stuff.
Yep.
Nosferatu. I've read Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I'll tell you right now, those writers were lucky because there was nothing to compare them with. Mm-hmm. They're not great stories. They're pretty boring. Dracula, especially Dracula, it's all done in people writing letters to each other. And Dracula's at the beginning and at the end. In the middle, it's all, every so other characters, and it was kind of boring, and I got through it, but it wasn't exciting. But you got to owe that to the fact that there was nothing to compare it to back then. It was wide open for these writers.
Well, here's a question.
Even nobody's done Frankenstein in a film, really. If you read the book, it's so different from the films.
Okay. No, I hadn't read the book, but...
Yeah, well, if you ever read Frankenstein, you'll be amazed how it's better than any film that's ever been made. And people, of course, copy the idea of that all the time. Even Dark Shadows did. They brought in a Frankenstein character. I mean, Dark Shadows went through the whole genre. They started with the vampire. They went to a Frankenstein type of character. Then they brought in a werewolf. The only thing they bring in was a mummy.
Yeah. I
mean, you got to use what was done. You got to renew it, make it new. But Dan Curtis did a great job on Dark Shadows.
Okay.
I mean, I've watched the reunion of the characters that were still alive, and of course, Jonathan Frakes did make an appearance in the latest movie. He was a guest at the party at the house.
Okay.
He died a month before the movie was released.
Okay.
Which was sad, because he made an appearance in the movie, and then before it even hit the theaters, he had died. That's sad. And he's from Canada. He's a Canadian. Actually, most of your good actors come from Canada. I'll tell you right now.
I always find it funny how many people don't know where I'm located here in New Brunswick. It's like nobody seems to know where New Brunswick is. I had maybe a handful of guests that do, but I think maybe one, maybe two tops from the UK have even know where New Brunswick is.
I'm familiar with Canada. I mean, mostly Quebec City. Mm-hmm. I've been to Montreal, Quebec City twice. I haven't been to Toronto, but people tell me going to Toronto is like going from Boston to Boston.
Okay.
It's just another big city. I was pleasantly surprised with Quebec City. I was treated like royalty up there.
Okay.
I mean, they treated me, they couldn't do enough for me when I was up there. And I was like, I didn't want to leave just for that fact, Whatever I wanted, they were like waiting on me hand and foot all the time.
Okay.
I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the place. It was great.
Yeah. Well, I noticed, like I said, when you're talking about writing your book, here's a question. You wrote your story, the one
my
about you,
yeah.
and then you wrote this. Wrote Blood Passion. How did you come?
Well, here's the funny thing.
Yeah.
When my stroke doctor, read my book, Blood Passion.
Okay.
And my character is attacked by a bat, a mutated bat, which is explained later how he got mutated. And he's attacked and bitten on the neck.
Okay.
So he has damage to his neck, which turns him into a vampire. Now, my doctor read it, and he goes, Jim, don't you realize what you've done here? He goes, what? He goes, you have a clogged carotid artery on your right side of your neck, which gave you your stroke. He goes, your character was attacked on the left side of his neck, which turned him into a vampire. I said, Doc, I never even thought of that. He goes, you took your life and put it in here. I said, a little bit. He goes, that's amazing. Every writer, you got to realize, when you read from a writer, part of what you're reading is part of their life.
Mm-hmm.
They draw from their life experiences and put it in their work, which is what I did. And even sometimes it's subconsciously you do that. It's weird. Because he pointed it out to me. He says, your character has injury to his neck, which changed his life. You've got an injury to your neck, which has changed your life. And it did, drastically. So subconsciously, that's where the idea really came from.
Okay. What was it like going from writing your story to writing a fictionated story? Like, what was the transition going from reality to fiction, and how did that?
Well, I wanted to write in the real world. I didn't want to write like Game of Thrones, which is on a totally different planet, or Star Wars, which is in a totally different universe. I wanted it to be in this world that we live in, so people could relate to most of the story.
Okay.
So you're writing fiction in the real world, which means you have guidelines.
Okay.
And it's fun to do that because you can make changes, but you got to watch out. You don't go too far because then it becomes so fictitious it's unbelievable. And the greatest task is to make it believable. I mean, I had people ask me how much I paid for the memoirs. And I said, I can't tell you that because I didn't. They actually believed that the story was real.
Okay.
Really, people would read it and they'd say, Jim, I want to know one thing. So, how much did you pay for these memoirs that you wrote the book from? And I just kind of like, if I was face-to-face with them, I kind of like smiled and just said, I can't divulge that information. So people, and I'm not surprised because people still believe to this day that Sherlock Holmes really lived.
Okay.
So it's not that weird, but I did it so well that people thought that the story was real. Now, first of all, let me tell you, I have no writing schooling at all.
Oh, that's impressive.
I've always been able to tell a good story. And if you can tell a story, you just write it down. And that's writing. And also, I approached the situation where I didn't want to be too descriptive and bore the reader to death. Because I've read some books, and they just go on and on. I'm on describing things and places, and I'm like, oh, my God, get to the story. Mm-hmm. If I tell you the color of a shirt, it's because it has something to do with the story you need to know. It's need-to-know only information.
Okay.
People like it, and I tried to keep the chapters short.
Okay.
So I know I've talked to readers, and they like short chapters. They don't like a lot of description going on. They like to get to and actually, in the first book, he becomes a vampire in chapter 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've read books where it doesn't get rolling until chapter 6, 7, or 8.
Okay.
So the setup is so long, you're just like, oh, my God. You end up putting it down, never picking it up again.
I'm one of these people likes to read like with my nightlight at night before I go to bed too, you know? Yeah. But
I found out, well, in the first book, the chapters are anywhere from like 8 to 9 pages, and then I decided in the second book to shorten them up to 4 to 6 pages, and people really like that better. Okay. Because the book, the famous movie, what is it called? Da Vinci Code.
Okay.
Now, without knowing it, you heard about this book, you go, oh my God, the book has 85 chapters, but the chapters are only 3 pages long.
Okay.
So it appears that it's going to be this long story until you actually pick up the book and say, and look at it and go, oh, the pages, they're only 3 pages long. And there's 85 of them because there's only 3 pages long. So, and people love that. They don't mind reading a long story with short chapters because they really feel like they're moving along.
Okay, yeah.
So I adopted the idea of using 4 to 6 pages per chapter in the second book. And people liked it even better. Surprising enough, Greg, people told me who read both of them, and actually Lesa told me the same thing because she's read both. She said, Jim, I like the first one, but I love the second one.
Oh, fantastic.
I said, and a lot of people told me this. And I said, you like the sequel better than the original? How often does that happen, Greg?
Not very often.
No. I think I can contribute that to that the sequel, although it has 2 of the original characters from the first book, it has some new characters, and it's basically a female cast.
Okay. All right.
I wanted to do something that would interest female actors.
Okay.
So in the second book, there's 5 female major characters are 5 females, ranging from 7 years old to 60 years old. There's 5 women.
Okay.
Of course, there are some men in the story, but they're sort of supporting. They're just supporting in the background. And I had a problem with starting that because I said to myself, okay, I'm a man. I got to write for women. So I got the woman Pam again. I got my friend's girlfriend, Jeannie, and my sister, Deborah, who's also an author, to be my beta readers. And I said, listen, what you guys got to do is I will send you the chapters as I write them, and you have to keep me in check. If it sounds like women are talking like men, you got to tell me. But through the whole book, not one of them came back to me and said, you got it wrong.
Oh, fantastic.
A woman wouldn't say this. A woman wouldn't react like that. They said, you're perfect. You got it right. Just keep going. That's what I was afraid of. I was like, if a man writes a story about a woman, you got to really research women.
Yep.
I mean, men and women don't think the same way, don't react the same way. I said to both of these three women that were beta readers, I said, listen, I don't want it sounding like two women talking like to each other like to be two men. And, in my experience in my lifetime of knowing women and so on and so forth, I drew from my life of, because in the second book there's a mother and a teenage daughter who starts out she's 7 years old, but she grows during the story. And I had a girlfriend who had a teenage daughter.
Okay.
So I watched them. I remember how they interacted with each other. So I thought back to that, and I said, okay, let me use this. Because mothers and daughters can be very vicious with each other, or very loving. It's weird.
Okay.
So I went back and I used that when I came to, like, if I had a conflict between the mother and the daughter, I would think back to my girlfriend who had the teenage daughter and how they interacted with each other and use that, the same attitudes and so on and so forth. And I was always getting positives from my beta readers. I said, what'd you think of that chapter? How'd it go? Oh, it was great. The conversation between so-and-so, she said just what a woman would say. I said, okay, it was great. And I was happy about that. And then I actually wrote a third book of Blood Passion, but the publisher wasn't interested in publishing it.
Why not?
And actually, Lisa's reading the manuscript, and she's loving it.
Why aren't they interested in publishing the third one?
I don't know. They just said they weren't interested in doing the genre right now.
Oh,
so I might have to find a new publisher for the third book. And I actually created the cover of my autobiography, and I created the cover of Blood Passion 2.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen the covers. They look fantastic.
Yeah. Well, the first cover was created by the publisher for Blood Passion. And Blood Passion 2, I did that cover.
Okay.
I also created a cover for book 3, but they don't want to publish it. I might have to find a new publisher. But Lisa's reading the manuscript, and she's loving it. She's got it on her iPad.
Okay.
And the chapters are short. It's got 35 chapters and an epilogue. And it also has a bonus novella telling you how the bat got mutated, which I will tell you, it brings in extraterrestrials into the story. And also book 2 brings in the paranormal.
Okay.
So the first book is a vampire story. The second book is female vampires and paranormal. And the third book is a female vampire and a paranormal situation. And there's a bonus novella at the end, which is only 3 chapters, and explains how the bat got mutated. The bat was an escaped experiment by extraterrestrials.
Okay.
Which brings in the extraterrestrial, which people love.
Yep.
And I did that in a way like it's a 3-chapter story that I threw in. I'm throwing it because I talked to the publisher when I was writing it. I says, that the prequel's only going to be short. They said, well, throw it in at the end as a bonus novella. I said, fine. Because it's a short story. It's sort of like a guy who's a scientist, like an Indiana Jones type of character, but I don't give him a name. And I took that from the Time Traveler book because H.G. Wells does not give a name to the time traveler in the time machine.
Okay.
There's no name. Hollywood gave him a name, but H.G. Wells never gave him a formal name. He just called him the time traveler. So I did the story, not giving this character a name, placing him down in Mexico as a scientist on a expedition, and he runs into the situation where he actually observes aliens. And he's able to translate because their thoughts are going right into his head. Because they're so far advanced, they don't talk to each other. They use telepathy.
Okay.
And he's right so close to them, hidden, that he's picking up their thoughts and understanding their language. It's really a cool little thing. And they create the bat, but it escapes from them into Mexico City. And at the beginning of book 1, there's a couple that are vacationing in Mexico City because I did it this way. I wanted to use a vampire bat. And the closest they are to us, especially New England, is Mexico. And I said, how do I get a vampire bat from Mexico to New England? There's no way they're going to fly here because they would have done it by now. So I did this. I had a couple who was vacationing down there who lived on the same street as my character. They were leaving, and the last night of their stay at the hotel, the bat got into their room. Now, this is where you're introduced to the bat. but you don't know how it was created. And the guy, he's defending himself from this bat, and he hits it with the floor lamp, and he knocks it out. And his wife is freaking out. It's a man and wife. And he knocks out the bat, and his wife says, Vincent, his name is Vincent, we have our last dinner reservation in 20 minutes. We got to get going. So they dress and they go. And he says, I'll just leave the window open. When the bat wakes up, he'll fly out. But he doesn't. He gets into their luggage and goes to sleep. And they bring him back to Connecticut unknowingly.
Okay.
And then when they get home and she goes to unpack, the bat comes out of her suitcase and then flies out their window and into the attic of my character's house.
Okay.
And people thought that was ingenious.
Absolutely.
And the idea was, how does bat get this way? I says, that's coming later.
So,
and actually it was a marketing thing I did. I even told the publisher, I said, listen, I'll put the origin of the bat at the end of book 3 to bring you back to full circle. So if somebody read book 3 first, at the end of book 3 they'd read the novella and want to read book 1 because they want to know what happened when the bat escaped and went to Mexico City. And the publisher said, that's a great idea. That's a great marketing strategy. I said, yeah. So, but they didn't run. They wanted to do it, but then they decided not to. I don't know.
How many books were you planning to do?
A trilogy, A Blood Passion.
Oh, fantastic! And there's hints of a movie going to be made.
Well, Lesa has introduced the idea of a movie to a production company she's involved with that is out of Texas. It's called Royal Goblin Production Company, and they got the name from. What's the movie he was in? We just lost him. He was a singer from England.
Tom Petty?
He was in a movie where he played the Goblin King. Labyrinth. Labyrinth was the name of the movie.
Oh, David Bowie.
He played the Goblin King.
Okay.
And these guys at this production company, they really liked him. So their name came from the Goblin King. They call themselves the Royal Goblin Production Company. Now she's introduced him, this guy that she knows, Brad, to the books, and he's somewhat interested if he can get funding to do it.
Okay.
So there's a possibility with him.
And she's going to play a part?
She wants to play one of the females, yeah.
Oh, that would be great, because, get in there. Actually, I think they should. I mean, if they can waste money on Twilight, then most certainly.
Oh, please. Waste money? Oh, my God, the stuff you watch sometimes. Like,
yeah.
Oh, my God, they paid to do this?
Like, you put some thought into this. Like even in your writing, you're a thinking writer, And I hope that Lesa can get a part in this, It'd be great to see.
And let me just tell you this. The books are under 200 pages.
Oh, wow.
The first book's 172 pages, the second book is 182, and the third manuscript is about the same. I don't believe in writing 600-page books. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
I would rather write 3 books equaling 600 pages than 1 book.
Okay.
I've listened to the readers out there, and they're like, and even production companies, you give them a book of 500 pages, they're going to rip out 300 pages and then make a movie.
Yeah.
They're not going to do 500 pages.
No.
So you're wasting it, and I found out why writers do that. The number of pages dictate the price of the book, and that dictates your royalty. The higher the price of the book, the bigger the royalty. So they will fill a book up with nonsense, extra pages, extra words, just to get a higher price on their book, so they get a higher royalty.
Oh, okay.
Because my sister, who's a good writer too, she's written a couple of books. She read the book The Help, which is like 500 pages.
Okay.
And after she got done with it, she said, Jim, I could have skipped 6 chapters and still been knowing what's going on. I mean, these writers just fill up books with nonsense.
Yeah, that happens, absolutely.
And you lose your readers because of that. They're like, and they fill it up with a lot of descriptive stuff you don't need to know. They just go on and on about describing this and the other thing. And then the tree had green leaves that were about as big as your hand, and they were flowing in the breeze, which was coming from the west. And I'm like, oh, my God, I need to know this,
Yeah.
It's a lot of wasted words, but if you go back to the classics, okay, these people were paid by the word. Robert E. Howard, which is my favorite writer, actually, who wrote Conan and a lot of other stuff that's never been touched, he was paid by the word. So he never used contractions. He'd always use full words. He never used don't. He used do not was what he'd write.
Okay.
Because he got paid by the word. Do not was 2 words. Don't was 1. So old writers have a lot of words because they were paid by the word. So you got to give them that.
Okay.
But new writers are not paid by the word. You're paid by the page, which means add more pages, get more money. But I don't believe in doing that. Lisa's, like I said, Lisa's read book 1 and book 2. She's now reading the manuscript for book 3. She's loving it. She says, Jim, I am not bored at all. I love this, and I don't want to put it down. She goes, and movie? She goes, these would make great movies. She says, you blow Twilight out of the water.
Oh, yeah.
And I even there was a young girl around my neighborhood here that read the first book, and she said to me, she goes, this is Twilight on steroids.
Yeah.
I says, well, for the simple fact that he is a serial killer.
Yeah.
He's actually killing people. He's not kissing and hugging them. He's killing them. And that's the reality of it, because I'm in the real world. I got to have some reality going on. The reality to a fictional vampire is he does murder people.
All Twilight did was make vampires and werewolves look really, really corny. And it should never have gone there,
Well, she had the teenage audience, but I brought in a teenage audience in the second book.
Yeah.
In the first book, my characters, early 30s, most of my characters. His mother's in it, who's in her late 50s. So it's all adults in the first book. But the second book brings in a child of 7 years old, which she grows to be 20 years old in the course of the story, which happens very fast. It's the way I was worried about that, too. I'm like, how do I skip time? And you just do that. You just skip it. You just, I like this one part in book 2 where all of a sudden she's 16 years old. She goes from 13 to 16. And because of what she's been doing up until 13, you realize, okay, for those 3 years, she's been doing the same thing. It's just been going on. And so I wanted her to grow up, because the first book only is like 8 months long in real life time. Second book takes a little longer, not to read, but for the story to open up. And the second book actually has 2 female vampires in it.
Okay.
And when I introduced that idea, they were like, oh, my God, vampire cat fights. I said, yeah. Oh, that's great. I love it. And I did. I had a younger female vampire versus an older female vampire. And the older female vampire was very much like my original vampire, but it was female. But the younger one was a little different, because she was born a vampire, a half-breed vampire. But because they didn't want to share the territory, they would have conflicts. And the final conflict is at the end of the book, where one has to win.
Yeah.
And between that, they have a couple of conflicts. And people loved it. I mean, the people that read it and were reading it while I was writing it, was like, I love the conflict. When's the next one? I said, I can't give you that information, They're going to have to wait, It was fun to get people excited. And actually at the end of book, a lot of women who read book 1, they told me they were in tears at the end of book 1.
Oh, fantastic.
I said, I made you cry? They go, yeah, but it was a good cry. I said, oh, okay. I don't know what a good cry is, but because they fell in love with my character, and it was tragic at the end. And they were screaming and screaming and screaming for me to bring him back.
Oh, fantastic.
They go, you got to bring Michael back. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to do that, because he's not the undead. They said, well, we'll find a way, because you got to bring him back. We love him. So I found a way. Paranormal.
Okay.
Which opens up a whole new, element to the story. He comes back as a ghost.
Well, there you go.
And I wanted the ghost to be as real as possible, like everything else. So I sat and I thought about ghosts, what I've seen, what I've read, and a lot of what I've seen was ridiculous. My first experience with a ghost was A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
Marley. And what was really weird to me was he could pass right through the door, but then he could sit in a chair. I said, no, you can't do that. If he passes through a door, he'll pass right through the chair and through the floor and be gone. So my ghosts hover.
Okay.
They don't stand, they don't sit. They hover above a solid object because when they touch a solid object, they go right through it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes much more sense than what you've seen or what you've read about ghosts. If you're gonna be translucent, you can't sit in a chair. You can't stand on a floor.
No, I'd never thought about that. Yeah.
I made it the fact that his ghost, or any ghost I write about, they don't stand on the floor. They just hover a few inches above it. If they want to go through, then they go down and pass through it. They touch it and go through it. And with everything else, doors, walls, stuff like that. So, and my reader said, yeah, that's much more believable for a ghost.
Yep.
I said, well, I thought about it. I thought about it for days. And I said, I want my ghost to sound real. And I bring it in right away. Like I said, I start stuff off right away. By second chapter, everything is set. But there is 7 years between book 1 and book 2. It's just a skip of 7 years, and it's explainable once you read them why it's 7 years.
Well, I like.
And the funny part is, the book 1 ends.
Okay.
And book 2 begins 7 years later, and there's a 7-year-old little girl who's feeding on animals.
Okay.
So who is she? Now, and I give hints. I love Doyle with Sherlock Holmes. I mean, he gives hints through the whole stories in the books of what's the ending is, and if you really read it carefully, you'll get them. Most people don't. And I gave hint by this. This was the biggest hint I gave. His name is Michael. The little girl's name is Rachel. Most people don't realize that Rachel is the female name for Michael, because look at the spelling.
Okay.
Most people think Michelle is the female name for Michael. It's not. It's Rachel.
Okay,
so that's the biggest hint right there. Michael, and the little girl's name is Rachel, and she's a vampire. So, could it be Michael's daughter?
There you go.
That was, and Lesa got all this. She is amazing. She read them. I said, "Did you get the fact that Rachel?" She goes, as soon as I heard her name was Rachel, I knew she was Michael's daughter. I said, "My God, Lesa, you're so intuitive." Yeah, she loves my stuff. She really does. She wants to read my autobiography too.
Well, you know what? I hope they can get this Blood Passion as a film. That sounds very, very interesting, and I'm really.
If it's done right, I'm afraid. I'm just afraid that they're going to ruin it.
Well, what you need is a really good director behind it. That's what you need. Somebody that.
Oh, a screenwriter. I need a good screenwriter who doesn't chop it to hell.
Well, if you can get somebody that you can work with, yeah. Because I hate it when studios interfere in things. Once studios start interfering, then you get a crappy movie, and then
do.
And studios are all about money. Well, they want a good product.
I'm just afraid that they'll just destroy it, and I would hate that because people love the books, and if they see a movie that isn't really faithful to the book, they'll be like, "Oh my God, Jim, the movie sucked." I'll be like, "Oh boy,"
Yeah. No.
Because once they take, you're supposed to sign off. They're supposed to pay you. You sign off. You give them control. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be willing to take less money but have some control.
Oh,
If it was just like advising or working with the screenwriter and the director once in a while, I wouldn't want to take, be in control, total control. I'd give these people their control too, but I want them to look to me for advice sometimes.
Sure, I agree.
I mean, my stuff's been compared to, his name, he's a famous horror writer.
Stephen King?
Probably. Huh?
Stephen King?
Stephen King. I've been compared to Stephen King.
Stephen King has had problems with a few adaptations of his films too, although he's
gone back to remake them.
He likes Carrie and he likes Dolores Claiborne, but I do know that I love The Shining, but he was not a fan of Kubrick's movie.
Because he just gave up control. He was just starting out. He was hungry for money. He took the money and walked away.
Yeah.
And now he's going back and saying, "I have the money to remake them, and that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to have control this time."
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Something Wicked This Way Comes by Bradbury.
Okay.
I was amazed. I read the book, okay? And actually, Bradbury wrote the screenplay, but he changed it.
Okay.
I was astounded by that. I mean, when I found out, I loved the book. The story, this book is great. The movie is not really the book. He made changes. I went in, I researched who did the screenplay, and he did the screenplay. So somewhere along the line, he said, I can write this better. This was like his second chance to write it again. So he made changes. And I like the original better than the movie.
Okay.
So there goes to show you, even an author writing his own screenplay will change things. Whether he's told to, I don't know.
Yeah, that's where you got to watch out for the studio interference.
Yeah, like you just said.
Yep.
Studio. Yep.
Well, Jim.
And then insurance companies have a lot to do with movies, too. I mean, they don't want certain things done because it's too risky or,
Yes, absolutely. Well, Jim,
So there's a lot to do with it unless you go independent. I mean, that's why Clint Eastwood went independent, because he wanted to do what he wanted to do.
Sure.
And he did fantastic. I mean, Bridges of Madison County, he said he's the only director that brought in a movie under budget and under schedule. Madison County was made in less time than he said he was going to make it, and in less money than he said he needed.
Mm-hmm.
No one's ever done that before in Hollywood. And Clint Eastwood did it, and he also starred in the movie. He wasn't supposed to, but he ended up because the actor they got bowed out. And there was not enough time to get somebody else, so he just stepped in.
Well, you can't beat Eastwood anyway. So you got Eastwood and Meryl Streep. I mean,
I was a little reluctant about Meryl Streep taking the part. I read the book, and it's a great story. And when they said Meryl Streep, I said, "Oh God," because I saw her in stuff before it, and she didn't look Italian to me at all, but she pulled it off. This woman is supposed to be right from the old country.
Mm-hmm.
She was born in Italy. She was brought here by her husband, who met her during the Second World War. And I'm like, can Meryl Streep pull this off? And when I saw the movie, I said, my God, she did it. She's a fantastic actress. She is unbelievable. I mean, you see Madison County, and then you see The Devil Wore Prada. You're saying that's the same person?
Yeah.
She's fantastic that way.
Yep.
She's a chameleon.
Yep.
And I love actors that can do that because, a lot of them can't. You see them in one movie, they look just the same in the next. It's like,
You say you come from an Italian background. Do you like any Italian films?
A few. Well, I love the spaghetti westerns that Eastwood did.
Okay.
Well, I'm mostly Italian, but I'm also Scottish and Blackfoot Indian from Canada, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
I have relatives. My great-grandfather came over from Scotland, married a Nova Scotia Indian, Blackfoot Indian, and then moved to Wakefield, Massachusetts, and had my grandmother. So in me is mostly Italian, but Scottish and also Blackfoot Indian.
Yeah, Nova Scotia's like next door neighbors to us up here.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I'm not pure Italian. There is some mix there. But it's a good mix, I think.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm old school. I'm 65 years old. Just turned 65 last month. Hollywood to me is, like I said, Humphrey Bogart. I love everything the guy's ever done. I love the fact that he always plays the underdog trying to make good.
Yeah.
It's an Alfred Hitchcock type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Alfred Hitchcock, his male characters were kind of always underdogs, always behind the eight ball, trying to, be a hero.
Yes.
I mean, Rear Window is fantastic. And the remake of that was horrible. God bless Christopher Reeve for playing the part, but it wasn't as good as the original.
I didn't see it. I don't know how you
seeing the Christopher Reeve version because it's not good at all.
You can't replace Grace Kelly. She's the most gorgeous woman I have ever seen in my life.
Oh, she was. I mean, when she made her entrance in Rear Window, I went, oh my
I get
God.
goosebumps. I get goosebumps when I see that. Like, I'd be laying in bed watching Rear Window, and you see James Stewart, of course, is in his wheelchair asleep, and the shadow drapes over him, and you see Grace Kelly's gorgeous face coming towards him, and James kind of slowly wakes up, and then you got her face slowly coming down and kissing him. I'm like, what guy wouldn't want to be woken up that way?
Oh, but that's Hitchcock.
Yep.
That was Hitchcock. I mean, he was a genius,
Yep.
cinematic genius.
Even with To Catch a Thief, he got some great work out of Grace Kelly in that, when she and Cary Grant.
Cary Grant.
Yeah, when the fireworks scene. I mean, everything is being spelled out without it being explicit.
I love the part where they go on the picnic and she's driving.
Yep.
And she's, in that day and age, women to take that much control was unheard of.
Nope, that's true.
I mean, she just took over.
Yep.
She's driving. She's in control of the whole situation. That was unheard of back then.
Yeah, I really wish she was able to sustain her film career. I never liked the fact that... now, I get it, she married Prince Rainier and she had duties and whatnot, but I know Hitchcock wanted her back for Marnie, and I think she wanted to come back, and it's like, it's like Rainier would pull her back. I get it, he had his reasons, but it's almost like he was spitting on her fan base, and I'm like, Dad, don't do that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a big fan of his.
She was great in Dial M for Murder.
Yep, that's another one, yep.
They remade that with Michael Douglas.
And it was bloodier.
Murder, which was never a good remake at all.
Yeah, they made it, and it was...
movie, it's good, but being a remake of Dial M for Murder, it just wasn't for me.
And they made it graphic. Like, why do you got to make it graphic? Oh, yeah.
That's another thing. You talk about liking horror. I don't like the fact that you got a guy running around with a knife chasing a woman in her underwear. That's supposed to be horror?
Well, one time it worked. Halloween, it worked. But Halloween was also not graphic either.
Yeah, but it's more exploitation than horror.
The original Carpenter Halloween, I think, was a good example of a great horror film. But there was also some intelligence behind Halloween. I think what happened after Halloween is they came out with Friday the 13th, and Friday the 13th made money, and
you had clone movies all over the place.
And,
I know.
And Prom Night and movies like that came out. And I got to admit, I grew up with them, so I have a love for those movies. But they were pale in comparison to Halloween. And Black Christmas, also another one that did really well, that didn't rely on buckets of blood,
Well, I think real horror is the unknown. Unknown is horrible. I mean, they consider my Blood Passion as horror stories. But most of the horror is the unknown. Not really what happens, because I don't get too graphic. Mm-hmm. Okay? I mean, when he attacks somebody, he sucks their blood, and they die, and it's over. Okay? Mm-hmm. The horror of it all is that he has to live with it when he becomes human again.
Okay,
That's the horrible part.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to live with the fact that he's killing human beings. Now, his other persona is more of an animal than a human. And think of how animals versus humans live.
Yep.
I mean, animals don't go to court for killing another animal. There's
Nope.
no such thing as murder in the animal world.
Nope.
So half of his personality is thinking like an animal, and the other half is thinking like a human. Talk about horror.
Yep.
To me, that's the horror. It's the horror in your mind. It's the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Not the knife going in and out and the blood spurting all over the place. That, to me, that's not horror. That's just graphic silliness.
Yep.
I don't need that. Like in Psycho, you never see that knife enter her body.
No, Psycho's brilliant. Absolutely.
It's a brilliant movie. It was great. I mean, the cast was fantastic. Like you said, they tried to make... Then they made American Psycho with Christian Bale. That was horrible.
You didn't like Americans? I have to disagree with you on that one.
Oh, I didn't like it. No, I didn't like it. Because I'm thinking about the original all the time. I'm thinking about Alfred Hitchcock and the way he did it.
American Psycho was not a remake of Psycho.
I always thought it was.
No, that was actually based on a book, but not the Robert Bloch book.
They should have never used... It sounded more like a remake as title-wise.
No, it was American Psycho. It had to do with the fact that the Patrick Bateman character of Christian Bale played was American, and I think the whole thing was about him and his group of friends that around that table. It's all about status and what's going on in his head. And
the human condition, yep.
Yeah, and by the end of the movie, it's like, did he do it? Was it in his head? What's real? What's not? I love the opening where it has the where the credits and the images of food with the dripping of that looks like blood, but it's really something dripped over food, and I have to say, and again, you're allowed your opinion, but I loved American Psycho. I gotta say.
Well, I always compare it to the classics, and to make a movie in black and white, to be successful and have the longevity that Psycho's had, that's amazing.
Psycho is a great movie.
I mean, nowadays people are like, black and white, really?
Well, you want me to tell you?
Casablanca's in black and white.
Well, you want me to tell you something? I had must have been several years ago now, but I had somebody in my car, and I wanted to kick him out of it because his brain is in CGI. But he tried to tell me that Paranormal Activity 3 was better than The Birds.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I wanted to kick this idiot out of my car. I was, I was not too impressed. Of course, he was being sold based on the fact that anything that's made 20 years ago can't be any good because blah, 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 And I say he's one of these sheeps that just buys into whatever Hollywood happens to throw his
3D,
way. Yep. So that doesn't impress me.
No, it's all in the story. I don't care if you do 3D or whatever. I mean, it's in the story. You've got to have a good story.
I don't want to get off.
You got to have the right cast.
I don't want to get off topic here, but last year I saw a movie 9 times in the theater, and I'd never done that before. And it was Richard Linklater's follow-up to Dazed and Confused. It was called Everybody Wants Some, and I loved Everybody Wants Some. It had a great soundtrack from the 80s, and I loved the movie. There were people.
You must have liked the cast.
I loved the cast, and I got to tell you, there were people in the theater that were befuddled that I went to that 9 times, and I'm like, yeah, but if I had went to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 9 times, they wouldn't have batted an eye.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So, do you own this now on disc? That movie?
Yes, I do, and I interviewed 2 of the cast.
Good. Well, it's a great. I mean, all the elements came together for you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen very often.
And the movie was poorly marketed. Like, Everybody Wants Some had no
don't
chance.
You hate that?
But you know what? I predict. And this happened with The Big Lebowski. It was not a big hit when it came out, but boy.
Neither was It's a Wonderful Life. That's
true.
bombed.
There's another one. Yep. There's another one. Plays every Christmas, and deservingly so. But
it bombed when it first came out. I mean, it didn't even make any money. It's like it was like a waste. Look at it now.
Look at it now. Yes, but I prefer, and I'm like this with the blockbusters. I don't go to some of these blockbusters until they've died down.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yep. I loved Logan, but I didn't see Logan until its final day showing here. Kong Skull Island, I saw in its last showing. I wish I didn't see that.
Yeah.
But and people say to me, well, people aren't going to listen to your show if you don't see these movies opening week. Well, then don't listen to my show.
Oh, God.
I'm going to give you Everybody Wants Some, not Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You want Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Wait and see if I decide to go.
I actually knew the guys who created those, Eastman and Laird. I knew them. They're from New England. I knew them when they first put out their first copy of the comic book. I actually have a second printing of the first copy.
Oh, yeah?
The first #1. I knew these guys.
Yeah.
And they hawked that. They were hawking that book everywhere. Marvel, DC, nobody wanted it. Look what happened.
Yep.
They self-published, and look what happened. I mean, Marvel and DC have been kicking themselves in the butt for not picking those characters up.
Yep.
So you never know. But you know what I do? As far as Harrison Ford reminds me of Humphrey Bogart a lot. He's not a really gorgeous-looking guy. He always plays sort of the underdog. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm dying to see the new Blade Runner movie.
I love Blade Runner, and I do have...
Yeah, the original is great, isn't it?
Yep, and I do have the remake, the sequel in my follow-up. Here's another thing, too. It didn't do really well on its opening weekend, and I'm like, why? Like, why are people...
I think people didn't understand it. It was pretty deep. I mean, the story is pretty deep. You really have to watch. It's not... I mean, it's considered an action film, science fiction, but there's a backstory to that. It's really deep.
Well,
it's about the human condition.
Exactly. Well,
and
I hear
wanting to be
people.
human.
I heard somebody was talking the other night about the fact that it's almost 3 hours or something, and I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, but if people will sit through something as boring as Titanic, then sit through Blade
which has
Runner.
been raised about 6 times now.
Yep, and garbage like Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
Then watch Blade Runner. Learn, experience.
Blade
something.
Runner has a deeper story than people get. Most people don't get it. You got these artificial life forms wanting to be human.
Yep.
In a bad, they want to be human. They'll go to any length to be human.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I did with Blood Passion. I'm creating the human condition. I want people to relate to my fictional story, and a lot of the part in the book, they said I could relate to that. Having those evil thoughts and wanting to do evil things, I've had those thoughts.
Yep.
Didn't act on them, but if it was going to for my survival, I would have acted on them. I mean, nobody wants to commit murder, but let's put it this way: if it's you or the other person, you're going to kill them.
Yeah.
It depends on the situation. If you have to kill someone to survive, I mean, let's not even talk about killing. Let's talk about lying. If lying is going to save your life, you're going to lie.
Chances.
Other than that, you maybe don't want to lie. But if lying is going to save your life or the life of a loved one, you're going to lie without a second thought. That's the human condition.
Yep.
You will do a bad thing if it's going to save a life. If it's going to perform a good thing, you'll do a bad thing. I mean, that's the only time you should do a bad thing. I mean, all the wars. I mean, I had a problem. I mean, I'm not going to go into this, but I mean, when I was younger and, the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill, I was questioning that up and down like crazy because I was a little boy and I stepped on a bug and I killed it. And I'm like, Mommy, I just killed a bug. Did I commit a sin? And your mother tries to explain it to you the best way she can. It's tough. I mean, nobody really wants to commit murder, but if you're faced with if you're up against a wall and someone's going to kill you, it's called self-defense. But even still, the laws in Massachusetts anyway, if somebody's coming at you to do you harm, you're supposed to seek the nearest exit. That's the law.
Oh,
you're not supposed to fight them. You're supposed to get out, get away from them.
Well,
the only excuse is if you positively cannot get away from them, then you can defend yourself. But if you have a chance to get away from them, you're supposed to take it, which I always thought was crazy.
Yeah.
But, it's the way things go. But anyway, movies nowadays, there's a lot of garbage being made. There must be a lot of money in production because people must be throwing their money all over the place because I've seen some movies that were total disasters. I mean, they're horrible. And I say to myself, they spent money to make this?
Yeah.
And they flopped, and they didn't go anywhere, and, but somebody put up the money to do it.
Yep.
And Lesa, being in the business, she reads my stuff, and she goes, Jim, your stuff is awesome. She goes, it would make, the story alone would make a great movie. I said, thank you. I take her word seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, I want to be in it. She goes, I want to play the lead female. I says, well, you could. You fit her description. She goes, that's what I want. She's excited. She's pre-excited. She wants to play the lead.
I hope she gets the opportunity.
Needs. I mean, she hasn't done a lead role yet.
Nope.
She recently, to catch up with you on her, she recently had a big role in a film that she just filmed last week in Florida. She is actually a vampire hunter in this film.
Okay.
That's about all I can say about it. She told me her character is she hunts vampires and destroys them. So the funny part about it is when she read my stuff, she's looking at the other side of things, where she's not trying to destroy vampires. She actually has the opportunity to become a vampire if she wants to take that role. But she wants to be the woman who's not a vampire, but is involved. But she's not hunting vampires, and I don't have any vampire hunters in the story at all. My vampires are so smart, they get away with it. There's nobody hunting them. Nobody even knows what they're doing. They get away with it. They got the law enforcement just puzzled to hell. Nobody wants to admit there's a vampire running around because of panic. They're covering it up. And that's what happens in our world. Everything's covered up because you don't want to start a panic. Especially now, Mystic is a touristy place. I mean, you come out with a story that there's a vampire running around in Mystic, Connecticut, the tourist trade's going to dry up.
Yep.
Nobody's going to go down there. So the town officials and the police and everything are covering it up because they don't want to lose the tour. Like in Jaws.
Yeah,
Remember
I was
Jaws?
just thinking that.
Yeah. I took the idea from Jaws. They're covering it up because they don't want to lose the tourist trade. And it happens all the time. You know?
Yep.
I mean, Cape Cod is being hurt by the sharks being out there.
Yep.
Everybody's afraid to go down there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Don't think they didn't try to cover it up big time.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're probably not getting the full story of how many sharks are really out there.
No, I
Think,
wouldn't.
oh, there's 100 sharks floating around. Nobody's going to go down Cape Cod. And that's a tourist. I mean, most of their money comes from tourism. That's going to be like, they're going to stay away like the plague, you know? So they go, oh, yeah, well, there was 3 sharks. We saw 3. There was really 30, you know?
Well, yeah, yeah, yep.
You don't get, it's like the UFO thing. I mean, I've been watching some recent stuff about UFOs. It's so covered up, it's sickening. Because they don't think we can handle the truth. And didn't that come out in a movie with, what's his name? You Can't Handle the Truth is like a cliche thing.
Oh,
now.
yeah. Why am I?
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, Few Good
He was the one
Men.
that
Few
said
Good
the
Men.
phrase, you can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
But you know something? That's the way the government looks at the human race. We can't handle the truth, so they don't let us know.
That's true.
In that movie, I read into that when I saw that. I said, that's what the government's telling us right there. We can't handle the truth on everything.
It's still going on today.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's not just the UFO stuff. It's other things they're not telling us about. You know, global warming. And I really believe that the Earth's axis has shifted a few degrees, which is changing the climate. But they're not letting us know because they're afraid we'll go into a panic. Because there's nothing they can do about it. Anything that they can't control, they don't want to publicize.
No.
You know, you got to give, in a way, you got to give them, okay, fine, you know, we understand that. You know, you don't want us worrying. You don't want the people worrying so much that we all, like, kill ourselves or stop working and stop paying our taxes, you know. So you keep things bottled up. But it's, you know, it's going to come out. Right now, I watched a recent film documentary, and they said it's starting to come out. Disclosure is opening on the UFO element. It's starting to come out.
I don't know much about that, but...
Well, a lot of countries, like your country, is admitting. Our country's not saying, oh, there's no such thing as UFOs, but Canada and Europe are saying, yes, there is. We have proof. But our country just says, no, they're wrong.
Yep.
And I have great respect for the countries that are telling the people the truth. Because I do believe there are crazy things flying around. Whether it's time machines or space machines, I don't know, but there's something going on.
Yep, very well. Very well could be, yeah.
I mean, that's like saying there's no other people living in space when there's millions of planets, millions of stars that could have planets revolving around them that could have life on them. And that's like saying that there's so many of those, but yet we're the only people alive in the universe. And I say, no, we can't be. Not with all those other ones out there. Somewhere out there, there's got to be other living human beings or beings of some kind. It's just too big. I mean, if there wasn't, what a waste of space.
True. Yep.
You've seen the movie Contact, right?
A long time ago. Yes, I have.
Yeah, that movie was great, and that's what she says at the end. At the end of the movie, when she's got the kids out in the field where the things are that SETI listens to, she says, "Well, if there was nobody else out there, what a horrible waste of space that would be." I love that ending line. That was great.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen Contact, but yeah.
That's a good movie. I like that. I like that movie, and it's got a backstory to it that's amazing.
Sure. Yep.
You got to look. Movies now are like action. They want to see a car chase. They want to see somebody get shot. They want to, I'm like, there's no Casablanca's in it. Casablanca is a great story. Not a lot of action in that film, but it's a great story. That's what Hollywood has lost. Hollywood has lost telling a good story. Now they go for the action, the science fiction. Now we're onto the superhero thing.
Oh, they're really pushing it too. It's like
and because they're making money. As long as they make money, they go with it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And you notice most movies, they make more money on an animated film than any other film because basically an animated film, you don't sell one ticket, you always sell 2 or more tickets at a showing because no 5-year-old goes to the theater alone. An adult always goes with them, so that's 2 tickets.
Well, it depends on the animation. I mean, Sausage Party was aimed at adults.
Yeah, but I mean, the real animated ones, like, the big ones from Walt Disney and stuff like that. I mean, even the classics, they put them back in theaters now and then. And you don't send a 5-year-old into a theater by themselves. Somebody goes with them. So that's an extra ticket being sold.
Yeah.
So for every showing, it's 2 tickets or more. Where adult film, it can be 1 ticket, and that's it. An adult goes in and watches the movie and leaves. You don't always go with somebody or a group. They love making animated films because of that, because they know they're going to make money on it because the multiple tickets that are sold. And then what parents do is they get a bunch of kids together and take them to the theater on a Saturday, and you're buying 10, 12 tickets right there.
I tend to avoid those audiences, though, because I hate being in a theater where there's kids, because kids just make a racket.
Well, personally, I'm saying money-wise, Hollywood loves it because they're selling multiple tickets on one showing. It's a guarantee, and that's what they go for. I mean, a lot of anime stuff, I wait till it comes on to Netflix or cable, and then I watch it.
Sure. Well, you know what? I'm really glad that Lesa Johnson had connected us together, and I do hope.
Skye L. Johnson.
Is that what she's going by now?
That's her film name now, Skye L. Johnson.
Skye Hill Johnson.
Skye L.
Oh,
Johnson,
L. L.
Well, her middle name is Skye, Lesa Skye Johnson. So she reversed it, and we talked for a while, and she said, I want to use Skye. She goes, but there always is a Skye Johnson. I says, well, put the L in the middle, Skye L. Johnson.
There you go.
She said, yeah, that's what I'll do. So she did that, and now she's known to the film world as Skye L. Johnson.
Well, hopefully she'll get a break with this and branch out.
Blood Passion could give her big break. I mean, if she gets a starring lead in that,
yep,
and it does well, she's made.
Yep.
And I would love to see her do it.
Sure. Hopefully she'll get that break, I'd like to see it done more as an independent, too, because an independent will have less studio of interference.
Yeah, well, it's still in the, beginning of it all. There's nothing been done. No one's approached me on it. She's talked to Brad, who's head of the production company, and I made friends with her on Facebook, and I've had not really one-on-one conversation, but we've texted a few times, but nothing big. She told me he's interested. He just needs the funding.
Yep, absolutely.
He's trying to get funding. He's actually trying to get funding to do it. That's when he'd want to talk to me. When he's got the money in his hands to do it, then he'll want to talk to me. Because he does have to pay me something. So.
Yeah. Well.
And Lisa's chomping at the bit to get into it.
Well, hopefully.
I think she knows this could be her vessel for stardom.
There you go.
The only thing with Lesa, though, I says, it takes place in Mystic, Connecticut. You can't use your southern accent. She goes, well, I'll learn to speak like you do. And I gave her some keys. On how to do that. First of all, when I talk and I say a word with the ER at the end, I replace it with an A. I don't say water, I say water. I told her this. I said, when you see a word with ER at the end, make the ER a A, and then you'll sound like me.
Okay.
Water, daughter. Any word with the ER at the end sounds like a northerner. Make it an A. Just change it to an A. And I said, that's one of the key items on how to sound like me. And it's amazing because there's an actor from England who played in both Fantastic Four movies. He played Mr. Fantastic, the 2 original movies. And he has a heavy British accent. But you'd swear he doesn't when you watch him in Fantastic Four. You watch him in King Arthur, his British accent shows like crazy. But Fantastic Four and a few other things he's done too, he can speak any way he wants, this guy. It's amazing. So I said, Lesa, if those actors can do it, you can do it.
Sure. Well,
I mean, her accent is charming. It's wonderful, but you can't use it all the time. I mean, if you're going to play a Northerner, you have to sound like a Northerner.
yeah.
She's lucky with this character she just played because the character she just played, the vampire hunter, is from the South, so she's able to use her regular voice.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so if you want to play, the female lead in Blood Passion, you're going to have to speak like I do. She goes, I think I could do that, And we talk about the accent and stuff. I says, you speak more like you're singing than I do. And they do. If you listen to her, it almost sounds like she's singing, not talking, which is beautiful. It's great and it's all for its own. But I said, if they're going to place the story where it should be placed, it's going to be in Connecticut, and you're going to have to sound like you're from Connecticut.
Yep.
I says, you might need a voice coach.
Yep.
But like I said, one of the key things to talking like me is changing ERs to an A. You say water, you say daughter. It's daughter and water, but you don't say it that way. She would. She'd say it that way, but not up here. And she laughs. She gets a kick out of that. And she tries it. She'll say to me, let me hear. She goes, let me talk, and so you tell me how I sound. And then she tries it, and I says, that was pretty good. I says, you sounded like me. Yeah, so, it would be she's looking at this as probably could be a big break, big vessel, big vehicle for her to get in really in. Well, she's chomping at the bit to do it, and it's got to happen soon because she's not getting any younger. Let's put it that way.
No.
And to be honest with her, the character she wants to play is like mid-30s.
Okay.
And she's late 40s, so little makeup.
Oh, I didn't know how old she was. She still looks good, I'll say that.
She looks great, but she's got to look a little younger, Which, makeup does it.
I could see her playing a vampire hunter, so...
Well, there's a choice in the story that she could play either the woman who's not a vampire or the woman that is. Mm-hmm. She goes back and forth. She's reading this up. She goes, maybe I want to play her. She goes, no, I want to... I says, you'd have to make up your mind if it's going to happen,
Yeah.
Because both these women, the one that is and the one that is, they look very much alike. Because even in the story, somebody says, you guys look like sisters. They look so much alike. So she could actually play either one if they fit her description.
Absolutely.
They have brown hair, they have brown eyes. She's got that all going for her. Same type of shape and body and size. She's 5'2". She fits the characters fine.
Yep.
Either one. But she has to make up her mind whether she wants to be a woman who's a vampire or a woman who's not a vampire. I said, it's always exciting to play the bad person. Most actors want to play the bad guy.
Yes. Yep.
It's more fun for them.
Yep.
So I said, that would be your choice if it's going to happen. And she's trying to push it to happen. Which would be great for both her and me.
Well, hopefully it will happen. It sounds very, very intriguing. So, yes.
Well, this kind of thing I'm doing with you and she's done with you, it's exposure. It's sort of like marketing. It's exposure.
Yeah.
It gets the names out there. It gets the information out there. I mean, like you do it voluntarily, God bless you.
Yeah.
And for me to have this done with the big stations, I might have to give them money.
Yeah.
Because I'm an unknown. They have to pay a known person, but because I'm an unknown, they may ask me for money.
Yeah, I ran into that. People ask if there's money involved, and I feel a little guilty about the whole idea of monopolizing my interviews. I don't know, because it's like, shouldn't the people I interview get a little piece of that? And I've had some.
You're giving them free marketing. You're marketing me right now. Okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay you anything to do it. You're not paying me for it's even. It's fine. I have no problem with that. I'm getting something for free. I'm getting exposure and marketing through you. God bless you for that.
Well, you know what? I'm really glad Lesa introduced me, and I'm really glad that she posted that on my Facebook page, because I might have just passed you off as somebody that,
I know.
was just looking to increase their friends list on Facebook, because there are those people out there. But I'm glad she opened my eyes to that, and I checked out your pages. Like, yes, Blood Passion does sound interesting. The book cover, as you said, it looks very enticing, and so I thought, you know what, I'm going to have you on, and she seemed very adamant that I have you on. So I said,
I want to thank you. I can't thank you enough.
Well, you know what? Like I said, just need your patience on getting this out. But like I said...
Oh, you got that. You got that. You got my time, my patience. You got whatever you want. And you're giving me free marketing here. Okay? I'm getting free exposure and free marketing. Yeah, those people pay a lot for that. Okay?
It might not be on live here till next year, but that's still an interview from this year, nonetheless. But
so I don't think the good Lord wants to take me for a while, so I'll be around.
Sure. Absolutely, but I'll keep it open to you, and like I said, just keep on checking my page or my YouTube page or whatever.
And the books are in ebook, and both Blood Passion books you can get on ebook, like on the Kindle, and they're only $3.99. That's the lowest I could get them to do it.
Okay.
So the Kindle app or the Kindle machine itself, you can read them if you're really interested.
Sure.
And you go to Amazon and you can buy it for $3.99.
Okay.
If you're interested in actually reading them, that's up to you, though.
Sure.
That's an option for you.
Well, hopefully you'll get.
And the thing is, right now, book 2 is selling. That same person who was trying to get $1,200 is now getting $43 for the print copy, which is still crazy. But the ebook is only $3.99.
Okay.
But Lesa was like, she goes, I want to be able to have the book in my hands. I says, okay, fine. I says, why don't you just get the ebook? She goes, no, I want a print copy. What can you do? Because she wasn't going to pay $1,200.
No.
I don't even know if this guy sold any of them for $1,200.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it go up week by week by week. It started out, I mean, when it got to $600, I was like, it's got to stop there. And then it kept going up. It hit $1,200 and then went down. So I don't know what was going on. But this is a guy or a company that's buying books and reselling them. Wow. They're not even reading them. They're just reselling them. And I was flattered. I mean, on Amazon alone, there's like 80,000 books.
Yeah.
Out of all the books on Amazon, he chose my book to try to get $1,200 for it.
Wow.
I'm like, and that's what drew Lesa to the whole thing. She saw this. She said, oh, my God, this book must be good. So that was like, I was getting like free marketing right there. I mean, I'm not getting anything from his sales, but, you know, when she saw that, she got very interested in the book because she was impressed with the fact that somebody was trying to get $1,200 for it. Well, and that's when we made contact, and we talked, and I said, it's not me doing that. I said, I have copies, and I can sell you them even less for the original cost. She only paid $16 a book. And normally, I think book 1 is being sold by Amazon print copy for $19.99.
Yeah.
Plus shipping if you're not a Prime member. So, I mean, I gave her the best deal I could give her. And the books are signed by me, so she has signed copies.
Well, you know what?
She was adamant. I want to hold the book in my hand. I said, okay, Lesa, we'll do a deal. You know. And then when she read the two, she goes, you have another? I said, I do have another one, but they don't want to publish it. She goes, can I read it? So I said, well, I don't know. At this point in time, I didn't know her too well. And I said, let me do something before I send it to you. She says, what do you want to do? I says, well, because it's not published, it's not copywritten, but there's a way for me to get a sort of copyright to it. What you do is you take your written manuscript and you mail it to yourself. And it gets a federal stamp, date stamp on it,
okay,
which is legal tender, more or less. And you don't open it. When it comes back to you, you just put it away. Because if somebody steals your manuscript, you can sue them, and you show it. You bring the original manuscript sealed in an envelope with a federal date on it, and you open it in front of a judge. And that's when they say, okay, you stole this manuscript. He wins. So I said, let me send it to myself first. I says, don't get me wrong. I says, but I want to protect my work. So I mailed it to myself. It took 2 days to come back to me. And then I said, okay, I got it sealed in an envelope with a federal date stamp on it. Now I will send you the manuscript. And I did, and now she's reading it. she understood that I wanted to protect my work. So,
Yep.
I mean, I was told that by a lawyer. They said, Jim, just mail it to yourself and don't open it. Because if you open it, that ruins it. You'd have to open it in front of witnesses.
Yep.
He said, seal it up tight. Make sure the post office stamps it with a date, and just keep it in your files. And that's where it is right now.
Perfect. Well, you know what?
So that goes for anything. If you write something and you don't want anybody stealing it, you just mail it to yourself and don't open it until time comes that you need to open it.
Absolutely.
I mean, even your shows. I mean, you do these shows. There's got to be some kind of copyright on these shows. If somebody broadcasts this without your written permission, you can take them to court.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to look into that.
You hear it on a sports broadcast. No rebroadcasting this without written permission from whatever. And if you do, I mean, there is a certain amount of things you can use without paying copyright. Like you can use 32 seconds of a song without paying for it.
There's a lot of that going around right now on online about fair use. Like I see a lot of people on YouTube. Like I don't use any clips in my interviews, from movies because I don't want to get into that. But I see situations where people have used clips from movies and they try to. I'm guessing they're following the fair use, but
you can use so much time of it.
And I don't
go over that time, then you got to pay a royalty.
And I guess they get strikes against them, and
Yep.
I don't understand that. And it's almost like do they not want their stuff promoted? Because a lot of
No,
these.
but they want to be paid. If you're going to use their work, they're artists. They want to be paid for their work.
Yeah.
And those are the lawyers. That's all lawyer stuff. Lawyers put that into their heads. You can use 32 seconds of any music, anything you want in music. But if you go over 32 seconds, they can sue you for copyright.
Okay.
That's the law.
I did not know that. 32 seconds.
So if you make a video and you use music, because my son teaches a media class. He's a high school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And they use music in the videos they make. But he only uses 32 seconds so they switch songs. And after 32 seconds, it switches to the next song. So he doesn't have to pay copyrights.
What about
I learned that from him. He says, Dad, that's the law.
What about clips from movies and television?
That also, too, you can only use so much of them, so many minutes.
Okay.
Even my books, the copyright with the publisher, I had assigned permission for, you go on Amazon, you click on the book, you can read the first 3 chapters. I had assigned for Amazon to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I had to give them formal permission to do that.
Yeah.
If they did it without my permission, they'd get in trouble.
Okay.
So the publisher sent me, things. They said you got to sign this so Amazon can put up a sample of your book on their website. I said, yeah, fine, I'll sign it. It was only 3 chapters. I said, that's okay. So yeah, it's all copyright stuff, and I understand that. I mean, I consider myself an artist. I should be paid for my work.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, it's just the way it is.
Sure.
I mean, I've always had a fear that somebody, even when my first book went out, my first manuscript went to the publisher, I was afraid, even though I signed a contract with them, I was still afraid that I wouldn't get my due. They'd steal it and just, blow me off.
Yeah.
And I spoke to a few lawyers about it. They said, no, Jim, they can't do that. And actually, the first book, I did send it to myself in the mail just to cover my butt,
Sure.
Just for peace of mind.
There you go.
And I didn't want Lesa to be insulted. I said, listen, I don't want to insult you, but before I send you an uncopywritten manuscript, I have to do something. She goes, what's that? I said, I have to mail it to myself. And I explained it to her. She says, no, fine, do that. Do it. She goes, I want to read it. And she's now reading it.
Well, she's
really
reasonable.
liking it.
Yep.
It's the 3rd book in the trilogy. And like I said, it's actually, this is unique because the 3rd book is really 3 books. I'll explain it to you quickly. The 3rd book, the character in the 3rd book is also writing a book about vampires, which I'm also writing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did write. It's done. So while she's going through her thing, she's also writing a story about a vampire, totally different from her, and I had to write that too, because I wanted to give the reader some of her book. And then at the end, you're getting the prequel novella. So you have my book, the character's book, and then you have the prequel novella. So there's like 3 stories in one book.
Okay.
Which the publisher was excited about at first, but then they changed their mind.
Okay.
I said, how many authors write a book within a book?
Mm-hmm.
They go, not too many. And actually, the people that were reading it for me, when I was writing it, I said, how are you doing this? You're writing her story, and then you're writing the story that she's writing, and you're putting it in there. We're reading both of them. I said, yeah. And, it'd just be spotty. Like, I'd give some of her book, and then she'd get interrupted and go back to her life, and then she'd go back to writing her book. And they loved it because it was exciting for them to be, waiting for her to write some more of her book and be writing her writing it. I'm writing it, but people were like, how are you writing 2 books at the same time? I said, I don't know. Just doing it. It was funny. It was really funny. And, Lisa's reading it now. So she read, that was in reading it now. She's in book 3. She goes, I love her book. I said, you love her book better than mine? She goes, well, you wrote them both. I said, yeah. So it's really weird because she's saying how she really likes the book, the story that the girl's writing in the book, but I'm writing it.
Yeah.
And we're laughing, we're talking about it, and I was saying, yeah, you like what she's writing, but I'm writing it. She goes, I know, but to me, she's writing it. I said, I know. It's so strange. But she's loving it. This is so different. I said, yeah, I know. That's what I wanted.
Well,
Because we talked about Hollywood, and Hollywood's doing remakes and redos and reboots, and I'm like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
They got nothing new.
Yeah, and they can create. People say there's no stories. Guarantee you, if I was up to it, I could write something different. I mean, I think people just got to put their mind to it. And
well, they have writers on staff.
Yeah.
And they tell them, they go, read these 3 books and come up with a story,
Yeah.
Or read these 3 short stories and come up with... I mean, a lot of Alfred Hitchcock stuff was taken from short stories.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking... I mean, what's amazing about movies and books is A Christmas Carol. Famous story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Done movies, theater. It's an 80-page novel. 80 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And look at it.
Yep.
When I found that out, I went to read it. I said, I got to read A Christmas Carol, get the original story. And I said, my God, it's only 80 pages long. It's not even a novel. It's a novelette. And look at the fame. And actually, when it first came out, it didn't do well at all.
No.
And look at it now. It is a super classic. It's been done how many times? Countless times. Movies, theater, television.
Yeah.
80-page novelette. And these writers go out and they got to write a 500-page book to be a writer. I said, no, you don't. You just have to write a good story.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But anyway.
Well, I'm really glad that Lesa Johnson, Skye L. Johnson.
Skye L. Johnson, yeah, that's her now. Well, if you look at her Facebook page, she has both names there. She has Lesa Johnson, and in parentheses under that says Skye L. Johnson, and also her movie page. She's called Skye L. Johnson. They approved it, which was great because me and her worked on that together and putting it together. And I said, do it, And then she says, then she looked up Skye Johnson. She goes, there's already a Skye Johnson. I says, well, you got to make it a little different. Put your capital L for Lesa.
Well, Emma Stone was originally Emily Stone, but I guess there was an Emily Stone.
Michael Keaton is really Michael Douglas.
Yeah. So it was. So she went.
And Mark Twain is really Samuel Clemens.
There you go.
Yeah, it's plausible in the entertainment and writing world to have an alias, let's say.
Michael J.
And
Fox.
I do it too. I mean, I write with
reason.
J.M. Valente, but my full name is James Michael Valente.
Okay.
And when I came to writing a vampire story, because at that point in time, women were writing vampire stories.
Mm-hmm.
It was Stephanie Meyer and the other one writing True Blood, and I said, so they're expecting women to write these things. So I said, I'll use J.M. Valente. Although there's a picture of me on the back. When you first look at it, you figure, I don't know if it's a guy or a woman. So I was trying to get in that way, as being maybe this is a woman writing a vampire story. And at that point in time, people were always attracted to women writing vampire stories. It's like Rawlings did.
Yeah.
She didn't want to come off as a woman right away. so she just used her initials.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what you got to do sometimes. Lisa, we went through the thing of how about just S.L. Johnson? She didn't like that. It was too plain.
Yeah.
We went through a few things, She goes, I like Skye L. I says, well, go with it then. I says, you can always go with S.L. Johnson, but then they won't know if you're a male or female till they talk to you and see a picture of you. I don't know if that's any good for actors, but, But we talked about it for a while. She settled on Skye L. Johnson, and they approved it, and now that's what she's known as in the film world.
There we go. Well, you know what? We're winding.
She's a great lady. She really is.
I agree. We're starting to wind down on 2 hours here, and
really?
Oh
my God,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. You know what? I had somebody on here back in September. It went 3 hours. So yeah, and you're not even my longest, but we.
Okay.
I'm really glad that I had you on here, and that Lesa Johnson had hooked us up. And I was going to say before you go, I'd like to know if you do a plug for my show.
My name is Jim Valente. My author name is J.M. Valente. I'm the author of Blood Passion, Book 1 and 2. And I'm happy to be on Greg's show.
Python's
Say it
Paradise.
again. Sorry.
Python's Paradise.
Python's Paradise in New Brunswick, Canada.
There
I want to thank you very much for having me on the show. It's a great show.
You know what? It was an honor, and I want to say a special shout out to Lesa, now Skye L. Johnson, for recommending you to me, and getting you to my attention. Because I
want to thank you for even stopping and paying attention.
Well, you know what? I like opening the door to new people. And it's great. I think your work. I think your story. I like the fact you're a thinking writer, and I think that's a fantastic ability and talent to have.
Well, the key to writing, being a good writer, is living a life, and because you draw from your life everything. Young writers, they're not as good because they haven't lived long enough to experience enough of life.
Sure.
Older writers always have an advantage because they draw from their own life, emotions, feelings that they've gone through, and they write a story that has a backbone like that. That's the backbone of their story, their life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to thank you for letting me do this with you.
No problem.
And if there ever comes a time where I stand up on a podium to thank people, you will be one of the people on the list I will thank.
Well, I appreciate
that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, if I ever get the opportunity to have to thank a bunch of people, you will be one of them.
Thank you very much. That's really appreciated.
All right.
You have yourself a fantastic evening.
You too. I love your country, by the way.
Well, our country
it's
loves
a
you
little tough.
too.
I mean, I've often thought about going to live there, but it's tough. They have some tough rules for people coming to live there. I understand you have to take a physical.
Oh, I don't know. I've never been outside in New Brunswick.
Right, but anybody coming from a different country, you have to take a physical.
Okay.
Because you guys have free medical up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand. They don't want to take in people that are really so sick they're going to eat up all the medical money, but I can understand that. But it makes it a little difficult when you think about trying to live, because I'd love to live in Quebec City. Oh, I love it up there. I love it.
Well, hopefully.
I fell in love with Quebec City.
Well, there you go.
I really did. I fell in love with the city and the people. I didn't want to leave. I was up there for 5 days. On the 5th day, I was like, I don't want to go. Like I said before, I mean, they treated you like royalty up there. It's a great place to go to. Really, it's almost like you being in Europe. It's really close to being in Europe.
Well, hopefully, maybe someday you make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I love to go back. I mean, I've been there twice, and I'd love to go a third time. And I did get this on the second time. I did get to stay at the Frontenac.
Okay.
Because the woman I went there with, her brother was working for that company, so she got a discount on the rooms. Yeah. So I got to stay at the front. You know the Frontenac, right? It's the big hotel on the top of the hill there, overlooking the St. Lawrence River.
I wouldn't know
it's famous.
because
it's wicked famous.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
owned by Fairmont Corporation. It's a beautiful place. It's gorgeous. Oh. And I got to stay there for 5 days. It was unbelievable. I love your country. I love your people. They were great.
you should write a story set in Canada.
You know something? If I write a Fourth Blood Passion, I may have, well, in the Fourth Blood Passion, my character will be traveling around, and she may end up there, yeah.
There you go.
But then again, do I want her up there killing people? You know, I don't know.
There you go.
I got to think, you know, like you said, I'm a thinking writer, so do I really want her up there killing people, you know?
Well, it could be a good escape for her. There you go.
Yeah, I know.
There you go.
But the people are so nice up there. I really don't want to send somebody up there to kill them, even in fiction, you know? I'll think about it. It'll be something I think about.
There you go.
But I'd like to go back physically myself, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what, Jim? I thank you so much for coming on here,
Thank you,
promoting
Greg.
Blood Passions. Yes.
Well, okay, thank you. God bless you. Good luck with your little show here, and just keep doing what you're doing, okay?
Absolutely.
Don't give up.
No, absolutely not.
All right. Thanks again. I'll say good night.
Absolutely.
And hopefully we'll get together in the future with Lesa on the line, too.
Sure. Let's make that happen.
Okay. Sounds great.
You take it easy.
You too. All right. Good night.